Hey guys.
Hi.
We are trying to get our guest on, so there's going to be a second. But welcome to Trigger Warning. I'm Antonia Okafor.
And I'm Nina Prevot. Welcome back.
Yeah. So, of course, we talk about guns and everything 2A, but mostly gun laws, though.
Yeah.
Mostly gun laws. So, but yeah, today we have a special guest, Chris McNutt. He is the Texas gun rights activist that is in the news right now because of constitutional carry and a quote unquote Republican who decided to table it because of it. So we wanted to get him on here with you guys and set the record straight. So that's what we're here to do.
Oh, there we go. Let him join.
All righty.
Welcome,
awesome.
Chris. Hi.
Hey, Chris, can you hear us?
What's that?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you and see you perfectly.
Awesome. Sorry I didn't give you as much time to prep so you could, look all pretty.
We had prep time.
Yeah. It's important that we look pretty. Okay. You look great, Chris. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so we'll get right into it. So basically, we want you to set the record straight. We want, a lot of different media outlets and organizations and individuals have had a lot to say about what happened. For those who don't know what happened, a few days ago, like a week ago? I don't even know.
It started Thursday evening.
Yeah, Thursday. Okay, all right.
A week ago.
Yeah, a week ago. So a little over a week ago, Thursday evening. Basically, what was in the news was that constitutional carry. The bill that this is the third session that we've tried to push it. At least Stickland has, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and people who don't know, in Texas, sessions are every other year, not every year. So it's been almost 6 years, a little over 6 years that this has been, gun rights organizations have been trying to push this, but especially the author of the bill, Jonathan Stickland up in Bedford in my area, Texas. And so he has been trying to push this. And this year, I think a lot of people who are pro-constitutional carry, just pro-gun rights in general, really thought there's a lot of momentum behind it because of the fact that we had all these other states that were pushing in had actually gone through with it. I always want to say Nebraska, not Nebraska, but Kentucky, South Dakota, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought Oklahoma was on there.
Yeah,
too.
Oklahoma. So all three of those states have joined.
That should make Texans angry.
Sorry?
I said that should make Texans angry that Oklahoma got it and we're just...
I know, right? Okay, I'm sorry, Oklahoma, but I have had people tell me that Texas is like, not Texas, Oklahoma is like the Canada of Texas.
Well, Canada's beating us right now.
I know. So I guess Canada's beating us. You're right. Do you have something to say? Sorry. I could go on.
Oh, no, it's okay. It just goes to show that, Texas isn't necessarily the bastion of Second Amendment protection that you might think it is.
Yeah. And we had say that again.
I said far from it.
I know. We have a lot of work to do. We do. And as a native Texan, Chris, you're a native Texan too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're honorary.
I'm a Colorado person.
Yeah, she's a native Coloradan.
My parents are from Texas, though, so I'll
all right.
Right on.
Well, hey, and depending on what part of Colorado you're from, I mean, that's old Texas as well, so.
Exactly. That's how I feel better about being here now. No, it's a beautiful state, and it's finally warming up a little bit, even though it was just snowing the last time we just got here. But yeah, so Texas is not, it's not really great on gun rights, just like Florida is not, right? And we've been talking about that too, talk about that in the last episode. But anyways, that push was there this year, and I really thought it was going to go through. But then our Republican Texas House Speaker decided to use a situation, and this is where I want you to elaborate and expound and give us detail about what happened that evening, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So, I'll kind of back up from the beginning, and all session, my organization, Texas Gun Rights, has spent tens of thousands of dollars, advocating for constitutional carry here in Texas this year. So, that's from sending direct mail to our members, constituents of Speaker Bonnen and his top lieutenants, We've been running boosted social media ads, running live calls, robocalls, and then of course I've made several trips to the Capitol to meet with some of our allies and some of the other grassroots pro-gun organizations, pretty much just doing everything that we could to try to advance this bill. And I also kind of want to throw this out there. Speaker Bonnen knew that he wanted to kill this bill, from the moment that he appointed an anti-gun Democrat who's supported by Moms Demand Action, no less, to be in charge of the committee that he referred House Bill 357 to, which was the constitutional carry bill. And, after he made that appointment, he made promises for a quick hearing to our bill sponsor, Jonathan Stickland. And, obviously that wasn't the case. He failed to deliver on those promises for a quick hearing. And, he just, then we started hearing reports that, he had been ignoring phone calls from his constituents. He'd been deleting, their comments and questions on Facebook, and he even started outright blocking anybody who dare, bring up constitutional carry on his Facebook page. And, and all at the same time, he was refusing to take meetings, with, some of the other pro-gun organizations such as CJ Grisham and Open Carry Texas. He made repeated attempts to try to, schedule an appointment to speak with the speaker about constitutional carry. And, he was consistently denied. So after all of this and, the false promises for a quick hearing, we started running up against legislative deadlines. We wanted a hearing by March 27th at the absolute latest, with a vote out of committee, the following week being, I want to say it was April 3rd, if I remember right. And that's just because, the nature of House rules, certain deadlines we're going to start coming up again. So those are the dates that we wanted. But once we realized that they were just going to, play this slow game like they've done, every other session, although it's much worse this session, under Speaker Strauss, we already had a hearing for the bill, by late March. That wasn't the case this year. Mm-hmm. So that's when I made the call to resort to more, grassroots campaign style advocacy in the districts of Speaker Bonnen and his top lieutenant. So I want to say it was Monday, March 25th. I actually flew from Dallas to Amarillo and, did flyer drops in the districts of Fort Price, which he's the chairman of the powerful House Calendars Committee, which is the committee that schedules, what bills come up for a vote on the floor of the House. And, so I did some research to find out who his elected local officials were, such as county commissioner, county sheriff, city council, mayor, stuff like that. I looked up, some of his top donors, and some regular donors from just going through the campaign finance report and, matching it up with the central appraisal district information so I could find their full addresses. And then just looked up the addresses for, some of our TXGR members. So I did targeted canvassing in those areas, at those houses and some of the surrounding houses, where I, left a flyer that simply said, House leadership is blocking constitutional carry, namely Speaker Bonnen. Please call your rep and urge them to help advance House Bill 357. And that was really the gist of it. And, the next day I did the same thing in Lubbock, which, State Representative Dustin Burrows, his district is there. And he's chairman of the Republican caucus. So he had, I'm sorry, I think my dog, Gunner, calm down.
It's all good. We know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next day, it was in Representative Burrows' district. And, as chairman of the Republican caucus, he has the power to, whip up his Republican caucus in support of this bill. And I actually had a good conversation with his communications director, when I stopped at the district office. And, I simply told him, I was like, hey, look, I understand that Representative Burrows is not, doing anything to actively kill this bill. But, as his position as the caucus leader, he can help advance it. So, I told him I was just going around to the district passing out these flyers. And I said, look, it's nothing personal. I've actually played board games with Representative Burrows in Representative Stickland's office, as recently as last session. So it was all professional, cordial. We exchanged business cards, shook his hand, I left, and, went out about my business.
Now, isn't that so is that the meeting that people are saying that you were one of the first ones that people were saying that was actually a bad encounter, or is that a different time?
Well, so now, as recently as I want to say it was Tuesday, Speaker Bonnen went on Lubbock radio, and he's telling people that now somehow I was brandishing my firearm when I was in the district office of Representative Burrows. Now, I was completely unarmed. Personally, I do not like going through the hassle of checking a firearm when I fly. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of me having TSA pre-check. I hate being at the airport. I like to be in and out. So I don't bring a gun when I travel by plane. So that's why it's completely ridiculous that he thinks that I was brandishing it when I didn't even have anything that could even remotely resemble a firearm. It's just a complete fabrication by the speaker, which kind of brings me to the next point. So like the next day, I was doing, which was Wednesday the 27th at this point, I was doing the same exact thing in Speaker Bonnen's district. And when I was in his neighborhood, because he lives in a very nice neighborhood with large houses. So naturally, many of his donors live in and around his neighborhood. So when I got to the speaker's house, I saw that there were two DPS troopers, parked in front of his house. They were each in their own cars, parked in different directions, talking to each other through the window. And so I thought it was odd that they were there. So instead of going to the door, I just approached the troopers, and I said, "Hey, do y'all mind if I, put this flyer on the door of the speaker's house?" And they said, "Sure. What is it?" And so I went and I parked the car, and I gave them both copies of the flyer, explained what it was, who I was, why I was doing it. And, I told them I didn't want to just go straight up to the door with them there because I wasn't sure if there was any threats or not. Anyways, they ultimately thought that what I was doing was okay. And they offered to put the flyer on the speaker's door for me. They asked me at that point, if I was going to be, leaving, heading home after that. I said, no, I've got more houses to do. And then that was that. As I was driving off, I saw the trooper walking up to the speaker's door with the flyer in hand. And as far as I knew, it was just a normal day. I've block walked many times for many causes and many campaigns over the years. I mean, I've been actively involved in politics about 7 years now. I've probably knocked on, I don't know, at least 15 to 20,000 doors in that time period. So this was nothing out of the norm for me.
Normal. Yeah, and that's when I first heard about it too. I was like, have you guys ever block walked like once? Sounds like a typical Saturday for campaign season or any type of like issue. Really.
And quite frankly, I can't believe that putting a flyer on the doors of these individuals would be harassment or anything like that. I mean, I get flyers put on my door all the time. No, I would not consider that harassment. Most of them are political. So that's crazy.
Yeah. And they're from people we don't, again, I think I saw something on maybe Facebook or something like, wow, you're harassed by someone who you don't share the same beliefs with, right? And you got a flyer on your door. Here we are, like advocates again, free speech. Like it's crazy, but
yeah, I mean, literally the next day, after the media blew all this stuff out of proportion, I had a local city council candidate who is running as a progressive candidate, which I obviously don't align my views with. Yeah, they left a flyer on my door, and I was like, oh, perfect. Maybe I should be triggered now, But the thing I want to point out here too is that nobody knew that I went to Speaker Bonnen's house other than the DPS troopers that I approached. I wasn't intercepted, wasn't detained, wasn't arrested. And then Bonnen himself. So he is the one who actually sought out the media, to put these lies out there and try to find cover for his actions for killing the bill. He wanted to find a scapegoat, and I walked right into his trap. I believe those DPS were out there specifically to set me up. Now, I don't think DPS is complicit in it, but I think they were used as his political pawns as well. And of course, the media ran with the stories that I was intimidating families. At first, the first report said that the speaker's wife, and
yeah.
kids were home,
Assault
and that
rifle.
she was concerned about my machine gun T-shirt, which simply it's really just this TXGR logo. I was wearing a T-shirt that had our logo real big on it. She was very concerned about that.
Yeah.
But then come to find out in the news reports, she wasn't even home. So like everything about this, there's been lie after lie that's being exposed. And yeah, it's crazy.
Well, it really saddens me that, well, that's the first thing too, is that I read the article. I read this whole thing when it came up, just because I think it wasn't even had campus carry in the name. And that's why it came up for me. And then I read that statement from in the Austin American Statesman. The fact that it was the Austin American Statesman, I think the next article I read was from Texas Tribune. Like, if he was the one who was going toward, going to the media, then it already seems pretty. I mean, right there is red flags, right? That he has these connections with these, I like to call them liberal rags, rather. It's just that, they're obviously anti-gun, and they were ecstatic. You can just tell. You can just like feel the joy as they were writing that article. And that's how there are multiple reasons, but that was even before I knew that it was you. Before they didn't want to say your name in the beginning. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it was at first it was a local newspaper from Bonnen's hometown. It was called the Brazoria Fact, and then after that, Houston Chronicle quickly got to it.
Yeah,
they were the first media outlet that reached me, so I gave them a long quote. Of course, they only took a snippet of the quote, and within minutes of me providing them the quote, they published a very full, in-depth story. It's probably the longest article out of any that came out within minutes. So, they already had their narrative pre-drafted, this outraged gun rights activists. It was a hit piece from the beginning. And if you've been paying attention to, some of the excuses why the speaker doesn't support constitutional carry, as a result of this media attention, he's using talking points that have been provided by Shannon Watts and Moms Demand Action, who is known as an outright, gun control extremist group who supports things extreme as even gun confiscation. And, so I think it's clear that, Bonnen, this was just a hit piece from an anti-gun Speaker of the House.
Have there been any media outlets that have reached out to you and reported on this honestly in terms of what you actually did?
So the AP, they reached out to me shortly after the Houston Chronicle, put out their article. But at that point, I was like, screw that. I'm not going to get, this even more warped and twisted. So I ignored that. And then, of course, I don't even know how many outlets I've been in, like 7 or 8 national publications and dozens of local and statewide publications at this point. So far, the radio has really only been my friend. I've been on KPRC in Houston with Kenny Webster, Chris Salcedo here in the DFW area, and then I think I was on KLBJ at the Todd and Don show. But other than talk radio, I haven't really been given the opportunity to give my perspective of what actually happened out there.
And that's sad. That's goes to show why we have, or why even the alternative media, movement started when it started, because of things like this. When they have a narrative, all mainstream media, we always want to say certain ones, but even, in this situation, some that you thought would be friendly towards you are leaving out, maybe not saying things that are negative towards you, but leaving out things that would have obviously been, okay, well, there's something more to this. For example, I was just on This Week in Guns show on the Firearms Radio Network, and they didn't even know about the quote from Speaker Bonnen, about him saying that basically, one, he believes that this bill would be hard for law enforcement to distinguish between law-abiding citizens or gun owners, right? Law-abiding gun owners and criminals. And then 2, the fact that he considered his quote bad public policy, and all under the context, all under the the focus of because of this situation. When have we ever, as gun owners, ever said, even with things like Columbine or mass shootings that have happened, that is why we have what we have in the Constitution, and because of things like that happening. We can't, something like that did happen in this situation, it didn't. But if it did, that does not give anyone the right, especially a lawmaker, to use that as an excuse to restrict our constitutional rights. So that in itself was also the part that I was just, I was infuriated about, because this Texas Republican, speaker, leader that we just got into office, right? Put into office, saying that essentially he doesn't believe that, constitutional carry is, constitutional.
Or even maybe that even if it is constitutional, it's just not good. And so we're not going to go with that. Or even if that's what Texans want, we're just not going to go with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, I think another thing to point to, Speaker Bonnen being truly anti-gun is he actually appointed, an anti-gun Democrat, Joe Moody, to serve as his right-hand man as Speaker pro tem. And if anybody, has been following along with that, Joe Moody is actually the author of the red flag gun confiscation bill. He was last year, and he filed it again this year. So I think it shows Speaker Bonnen's priorities when it comes to our gun rights.
Absolutely. It's kind of the same thing I see with like Lindsey Graham, right? He's, he's like right next to Dianne Feinstein, I think, right? Feinstein. And
is it Stein or Steen?
Steen or Stein. Anyways, basically that she's, with the whole red flag on the national level, pushing that bill, and people are just like easily forget because he had like one good meme or something like recently, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, he is still a rhino. Lest you forget. Same thing in the Texas side. I have to keep hounding people about the fact that just because your state is a red state doesn't mean that they're pushing constitutional or even just conservative bills in general. I mean, it's not even just, with this constitutional carry law, but we saw with, several in the last couple of days, I just saw them compromising on the abortion bills that are on the floor right now. And the taxes. That's a whole different
oh yeah.
That is a whole different episode. But we're trying to push lower property taxes, so
we gotta raise that sales tax.
It's not like that's our platform. It's not.
And they've got historic levels of revenue coming in, and they've already spent that money, and now they're trying to do a tax swap and sell it as a decrease of your taxes. It's absolutely ridiculous what the Republicans are doing here in Texas.
Well, if anything, we're appeasing the Democrat. That's what it seems to be, is that we have this influx of people who are trying to turn Texas blue. And after the midterm elections, I've been very scared that they're going to be successful at it. But here we are as Republicans, instead of, being brave and courageous and saying, no, we're not going to allow you to push things that are against what we believe in our values. No, we're just going to say, we're just going to cower already and just say, yeah, you can have this. You can have this.
And you don't have to turn Texas blue if the Republicans are going to vote the way the Democrats would anyway.
That's so true.
Well, and then I think what the Republicans don't realize is that the more that they neuter themselves and by going, right or going to the left or more center, is they're going to alienate their own base. Nobody's going to be motivated to come out and vote for them. And the people that they're trying to appease are the ones that never voted for them in the first place. And those people are going to continue to vote for the progressive Democrats that just want to destroy everything that we have in the state of Texas. They're just trying to hand over power to the other side on a platter without even throwing up any opposition. And if they truly thought that 2020 is going to be up for them play for Texas, then why wouldn't they try to pass the most conservative stuff that they can right now if they think they're about to lose power? Instead, they just want to play nice. And I can guarantee you that if the Democrats take power in the state legislature, they are going to be ramrodding every single liberal progressive proposal that they have in mind.
Just like in Colorado, it is just a catastrophe. We got an all blue House and Senate, and it is just terrifying. So
Yeah, even though the people had actually spoken and said that they wanted they wanted conservative policies. They're just, they're just ramming through oil and gas, legislation and the red flag laws. And
they want to change the curriculum to add in all this, weird kind of gender-bending nonsense. Not to mention giving up our state sovereignty with the Electoral College bill. So there goes that too.
Yeah, there's that one.
Sorry, but that's a tangent about Colorado. But really, don't let your state go all blue. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, and then even more so. So you would think, like, if that wasn't enough, this story of what happened just last week, can you tell us what happened just a couple days ago at a dinner that you were attending?
Right. Yeah. So Tuesday evening was the Republican Party of Texas annual spring dinner, and weeks ago, or not long before, but before this, controversy even happened. It was 4 or 5 days before I actually did my block walking. Oh man, I don't know if y'all can hear that or not. When my phone rings, my Google rings on the computer.
No, I couldn't hear it.
Okay. So they had their annual spring dinner, and I was invited by Darlene Pendery, who is a very generous donor to the RPT and a very nice woman. She sent me the invite. I think it was 4 or 5 days before I even did my first round of block walking, and Lubbock and Amarillo and the Speaker's District. So it was before any of this happened, and at the time, I accepted because I was planning to, from the beginning, hand deliver a letter from the president of our national affiliate, the National Association for Gun Rights, to the speaker, to let him know that the fate of constitutional carry rests squarely on his shoulders. And, so even though all this stuff played out in the media, I felt like he was trying to get me to, back down and cower and, not leave my home and shut up. But I decided I was going to continue, with my plans to attend this meeting. And sure enough, he was there, just like he was supposed to be. But, he tried to blow things up. He got wind of my attendance well in advance. According to media reports, he heard it from other legislators that I was going to be there. So I'm just sitting there eating my salad at this dinner, and all of a sudden I feel a big slap on my back, and I hear somebody yelling, and I turn around, and of course it's Dennis Bonnen. He's yelling in my face, but it was nothing more than theatrics. Like, he was saying, don't you ever come to my house when I'm not there. Don't you threaten my family. If you want to meet with me, come to the Capitol, blah, blah, blah. The same stuff he's been saying in the media. But I think it was really just, to show all of his little minions around him, that he's the big man. But, I've heard from other people that, he's got a history of temper tantrums. He's got little man syndrome.
I don't know how tall he is. So I can't say.
I actually don't know how tall he is. I was sitting down this whole thing, but he did look smaller in person than I expected him to be. And then, of course, the gentleman that was sitting right next to me, his name is Dave Wiley. He's long been an activist in Tarrant County. He got up and in front and tried to defuse the situation, at which point he offered him a red Kool-Aid packet and asked him to help, start keeping Texas red. And then, of course, Speaker Bonnen threw that on the table.
Yeah.
He was angry.
Well, there you go. I mean, you gotta throw the Kool-Aid, then
throwing Kool-Aid around like
oh, and
it's over. It's over.
And I think he also showed how sensitive he is.
That was really racist. Nina's like, did you just say that?
I don't know.
It's called trigger
maybe
warning, guys.
Here.
Yeah, it's called trigger warning, guys.
I
he's like, Chris is like.
Yeah, I think he really showed too, just like how sensitive he is to other people's criticisms and all this, because he noticed, former state representative Matt Rinaldi was also sitting at my table directly across from me, and over the weekend, Rinaldi kind of made joke on social media by posting a photo of me with his 1.5-year-old son in my lap, wearing my scary Texas gun rights T-shirt, and he said something along.
an assault rifle. I want you to know. No, assault weapon. I think we can still use that in the law.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of, my son, accepted this, or was intercepted by this, gun rights extremist, outraged gun rights extremist. So Bonnen, he was like, and Matt, how dare you go to social media to mock me? And I don't know. It was just, he just seems like he's slowly becoming unhinged by every criticism. And I don't think that's a great sign for somebody who's, in the leadership over the entire Texas House, the third most powerful elected official in the entire state of Texas. And, you can't even take simple online criticisms. So it's
snowflake.
Interesting.
Off online. I'm sure he has interns. He does not need to be on there. I'm sure his
his staff,
his
or whatever,
his crisis management team is like, dude, get off. Just stop.
Well,
First rule of YouTube, or first rule of being online. Don't read the comments. I mean, I feel like that should be part of like the oath when you take.
I will not read my social media comments.
I will get a social media intern if I must. But yeah, so I saw that too, and I also talked about this too, is that this is not really good for anyone. We're kind of laughing and everything, but at the end of the day, the anti-gun side, the Democrats, are all laughing at us, and just they're going to use this, when the future, when we come to different types of legislations, not just constitutional carry. And that's what aggravates me, the most, is that this will be something that other people, the party can use against us in plenty of other legislation, not just constitutional carry. Even concealed carry. I mean, the stuff that he was saying was basically, if you're a fanatical gun rights activist because you believe in something like this, something so central to our rights. So he was hurting everybody, not just Texas gun rights or you or what have you, whatever he thinks he's trying to get rid of. He's hurting the whole cause, and other organizations or individuals that are going against this, not refusing to listen to all the facts, which I just think should be something standard. It's just something so simple.
Right.
And you can easily figure out what happened. That's why you're on here today, so you can give everyone, what the 411 was. But if you don't, then you are also making it harder for everybody else, whether it's your cause that you believe in or not. So we're on the same team here.
Right. And what I found particularly alarming is that they've taken I guess in theory, there's a baby nugget of truth, which is that technically you were at his home with a flyer. But they're using that to blow it up into as if you were doing all kinds of things that you didn't do. They're misrepresenting your actions. Mm-hmm. And then they're using that misrepresentation to attack the rights of Texans. And that is just outrageous to me. And the fact that other Texans aren't more outraged about it, or that the media is willing to just go along with these lies, is really disturbing to me. So I don't know. It worries me. I don't know what you think the future is for constitutional carry in Texas, but I hope it's not gone for good. So
yeah, I would love to hear that from you. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, we're certainly going to continue advocating for it. I mean, it's our number one priority legislation in the state of Texas. So, even if we don't get it this year, which it's definitely looking like we won't, now that we know that the speaker, truly is against it. Before, he was just in the shadows trying to kill it. Now he's, out in the open opposed to it. But we're not going away. We're going to stay ramping up and continuing to build up our group here in the state of Texas. And, come 2021, when we're, gaveling in for the next legislative session, we're going to start it all over again. And in the interim, we're going to run issue discussion programs and, also our candidate survey program to find out who is pro-gun and who isn't. And we're also going to be exposing the anti-gun actions of candidates, running for re-election who previously ran on a pro-gun platform, but did absolutely nothing in this session to actually help advance pro-gun legislation. So we're going to stay busy regardless. And, I think as long as, we stay on top of it, I think we're going to have good chances for constitutional carry in the future.
Yeah, and good for you, especially on that in terms of making sure that you make people more aware of how people who got into office saying they were pro-gun then voted, because a lot of people will just vote for, you know, the R or the D or whatever,
or even the L.
Right, or even the L, and think that they're voting for someone pro-gun. But I think that more information about how people actually act once they're in office is really important. And also just before, you know, a newbie gets into office, to find out where they actually stand on these things, because a lot of people just don't do that research. So really good on you for making sure that information's out there.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and okay, so we've had several people also, and I will say not until very long, like not too long ago, I didn't really know what constitutional carry really meant. So for those who don't know, can you explain, Chris, what constitutional carry is, what that looks practically, what that looks like practically, say when we do pass constitutional carry here in Texas, in Texas, yeah, in Colorado, it will happen.
will
be next, yeah, or even before, who knows? So can you tell us what that is? What's constitutional carry?
Yeah, so basically it's a simple concept. It basically says that if you're able to legally possess a firearm, you know, handgun, rifle, whatever, under federal law, then you shouldn't have to beg, you know, permission for the government, or have to pay, you know, any taxes or fees to exercise your right to bear arms. So, I mean, that specifically says that criminals can't carry. And it's something that 15 states already have as law of the land. We are hoping Texas is going to be the 16th. But one thing I always like to point out too is there are 31 states in the country that have unlicensed open carry of handguns. And even in Texas, we have unlicensed carry for long guns. So shotguns, you know, rifles, even the big scary AR-15. But for some reason, if you know, if I went down the street,
a high-powered rifle, I want you to know that. And for those who don't understand what I'm saying, like, I'm joking.
Yeah, that was sarcasm.
Yes, that was sarcasm. Okay, sorry.
For some reason, the handgun's even scarier than an AR-15. So we have to beg for permission through license process for that in Texas, and we're just so behind, you know, so many of the other states, and even that licensed open carry of a handgun is relatively new to Texas. We only got that back in 2016.
Really? I had no idea it was that recent. Oh my god!
I know.
And so before that, we were one of only, I want to say 5 states in the entire country that didn't have any form of open carry, and of course that's right alongside states like Illinois, New York, and I want to say California. So
California's on that list.
Yeah, very liberty states. Yeah. Again, kidding. But yeah, I know. And I'm glad that you brought up the whole unlicensed open carry. And that's, I mean, I remember going to Nevada after the Las Vegas shooting. And my friend just like open carrying after, right? And I was like, what? You can't do that in Nevada. And he was like, no, actually I can. I don't need a license even. I choose not to do it and the history behind that. If you see the book behind us called Gunfight, and it's not a pro-gun, it's not very anti-gun. It's a pretty, you know, straightforward book, but I remember reading it for the first time and learning that unlicensed open carry was actually pushed by gun control advocates because listen to this logic. The logic was that they prefer to know who was carrying a gun. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that might be nice.
So yeah, that is why we have more unlicensed open carry. People don't choose to do it. That's why you don't see it, and most people don't know about it. But yeah, concealed carry movement was pushed in what was in the 70s and not ended, but really for the most part 90s. If I'm wrong, Chris, tell me. But
I know in Texas we didn't get you know, carry until 96.
Yep. Yeah.
That still seems too late. That still seems way too late.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you consider our big pro-gun, don't mess with Texas bravado, and then you know find out that we're behind, you know, the ball, behind the curve on so many, you know, when compared to so many of these other states. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And again, that's why I said in the beginning, you know, Chris is a native Texan. I'm a native Texan. I love Texas. And I know you guys can get mad, but even our Constitution, I put Texas above America, okay? So if I had to, but if we had
Colorado, so it's all right.
yeah, so it's just look, I love Texas, and that is why I love my state so much that this infuriates me so much, and I want to set the record straight. For those, especially those groups that are trying to do good for our constitutional rights, like you guys are, like you are, Chris, and I've known you personally, and I've talked about that too, that, I was at your wedding. I can't believe that was last year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I know you. I know you're a mild-mannered man. You are a man that that would not, all these things that, when I found out it was you, I was just like, are you kidding me? I mean, I already had red flags before, but then I was just like, no, I know this person. I know you're what.
Don't use red flag. I'm easily triggered by that word.
Okay. I will say that I was, every time I said red flag, I was like, I need to figure out something else. But absolutely, that was just something I just knew the bottom of my heart that it wasn't true about you. So I'm glad that you said yes to coming on here onto the show and talking about it and giving us, setting the record straight. So thank you.
Yeah. And if you'll bear with us for just 1 second, I'm going to see if I can see the live chat. Maybe if we tab here.
Oh, see if you have any questions.
Yeah. I actually don't know how to see it.
They're probably like, we see you right now.
Yeah. People have probably said a lot. Oh, is that what we needed to do?
Okay.
Oh, so maybe it'll just publish.
Yeah, it'll publish later. So we're gonna have to learn that and not be weirdos. Right. Sorry for those who are trying to. You can always say something after the fact, and we'll get Chris to answer the questions later on. So. But thank you so much for joining us, Chris. And how if people want to follow you and follow your work and support you, can you let our audience know how to do that?
Sure. So on Facebook, I'm I want to say it's facebook.com/McNutt for Texas, but you can search Chris McNutt. Also, if you're interested in Texas gun rights, you can go to txgr.org or texasgunrights.org. You can sign up for our email alerts there, sign our petition for constitutional carry, and also join as a member as well.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank again for the work that you're doing. We're actually going to have Rachel Malone from Gun Owners of America soon and talk to her and the work she's been doing as well. But the thing is, people don't know, like, we're all a big family. Like, Rachel knows you. Like, I've known you in the gun world for a while now. So,
yeah. Rachel's been doing it longer than I have. Rachel's fantastic.
Yeah, she is. And we're kind of biased because she's also a female. So we're like,
there's that.
You're awesome too, Chris.
Yeah, really. Thank you for all you do. I'm sorry that the media has attempted to kind of smear you in this way. It really is unfair for you just fighting for our right to defend ourselves.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you guys later. But this was Trigger Warning with Antonia Okafor and
Nina Prevot. Nice to see you all.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.